trade deadline Monday with you as it just passed a few minutes ago. And joining us now to talk more about the Rangers and where they go from here is Jared Sandler here on The Fan. And a good afternoon, Sands. How the heck are you?
What's up, fellas?
Well,
you don't sound overly excited.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's cool. Jacob deGrom wants to be a Ranger and believes in this group. There's a lot of belief in the group. I don't know if I can tell if this is a win or a loss today for the Rangers faithful. What do you think?
Well, I guess, if you were to have sold today, then if you like the prospects you got, and obviously we would have no idea how it would play out, then, you would say it's a win. I guess with the path they're taking, we'd have to revisit it in a couple months. Because if the Rangers make the playoffs, I know the common response, well, how far could they go? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like, this group went 40-20 like the 2023 Rangers did, but a lot of people were saying or asking the same questions in 2023. But let's just say the Rangers made the playoffs and didn't win the World Series. They came up short at any level en route to that. This organization's made the playoffs once in the last decade. And so making the playoffs is not something that, you raise your nose at or anything. So we'll see. But if the Rangers aren't able to make the playoffs, I guess, it'd be fair to ask the question, well, what could they have gotten for some of their assets who, will no longer be under team control? Remember, one thing to consider here is the CBA could totally change the complexion. But for some of these guys, you might, depending on your luxury tax status and whatnot, you might be able to get draft pick compensation if they were to sign elsewhere. And so perhaps you're weighing any offers against that, but the CBA could change that because that's something the players want to get rid of. So that way teams don't feel like they've got to pay that price when they sign those guys. But yeah, I mean, the trade deadline typically is the time when you make a move in one direction or another, and obviously that really wasn't the case for the Rangers today at all.
Yeah, I mean, there was the report at the start of the year that it wouldn't be a compromise deadline; they'd either be all in or all out. But I guess it made sense as the season evolved, huh?
Yeah, and Gavin, I don't know to what degree they could be all in, in the sense that I got to think about what the big market Yankees and Red Sox, what they'll do, what the Padres seem to do, more often than not. Just because I don't know that the Rangers had the guys in the farm system that other teams valued in a way that would allow them to make some of those moves. Not that they couldn't, but then if you do, then what do you have left, and is it worth it? I don't know. We have all the ranking systems available publicly, but teams value guys in different ways. Angel Arredondo, who got traded to the Angels, wasn't on a lot of people's boards, but obviously the Angels, had him in some capacity in a place of value. So it's tough to know, but I think the thought was, hey, if you're going to ride with this veteran group, that you are going to be pointing in one direction or another. And again, that just for whatever reason that wasn't the case. Now, if the reports are true, and it seems they are because Jacob deGrom commented on it, the Rangers obviously made efforts to move him and to act as a seller in that regard. Had a deal been done, would the Rangers have done more deals in the path of a seller? It's very possible, right? So it's tough to know. I'm sure Chris Young will talk at some point, and whatever insight he offers on maybe what the mindset was, but it was public, and Jacob deGrom effectively acknowledged that he was approached, and he said no, that he wants to stay here. So I guess that should be noted, obviously, that it wasn't like they did an effort to make a big move like that, but the no trade clause got in the way.
I don't want to put you in a bad spot, but do you know if any traction really was there for Evo or Seager as those reports were surfacing that the Rangers might be taking offers for those guys?
Yeah, I'm sure there were phone calls, right? Like, I think with Nathan Eovaldi, that might have been shut down quickly because he had a full no-trade clause. Now, Corey does not have a full no-trade clause presently. At the end of the season, he will earn that by, achieving 10-5 rights, which means, all players who have at least 10 years of service time and at least 5 consecutive years with the same team earn a full no-trade clause. At this time, he only has an 18 no-trade clause. But Corey's also probably a challenging, a challenging player to trade if you are of the mindset that you want to trade him, just because, the Rangers aren't just going to give him away, but, the other team on the other end is going to use anything that they can to try and create some leverage in the negotiation. And I think just because he hasn't been healthy this year, it makes it a little bit more challenging. But then obviously the length of the contract really maybe more than anything else. But, if the Rangers are going to try and win a division, then you probably want to have your best player. And then, you can readdress some of these things in the offseason, if the Rangers feel like they want to make some changes in that way. And maybe that's, I told Gavin, hey, let's check back in a couple months. Maybe you got to check back in 5 or 6 months. If they make moves in the offseason and it ends up that, they get a return for guys, if that's the path they want to take. But, I don't know to what extent conversations were pushed down the road for those guys, but I'm certain that, there were conversations, just don't know, how close anything really came.
It's Jared Sandler here with you on The Fan. Do you think there is a market for DeGrom and Seager coming up in the offseason? I mean, what would you hope to get if you were dealing him, or what kind of a deal would you be looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think with DeGrom, he'll have 1 year left on his deal, and so teams are a lot more likely to, I don't want to say take a chance, but to invest in that if you're just trying to win in 2027, knowing that you're not committing to more. Now, if Corey comes back, has a great final 2 months, and hey, maybe the Rangers make the playoffs, and maybe he does what he always does in big moments and delivers, then that changes the narrative, obviously. But I think with Corey, it depends on the team. Corey wants to play shortstop. He was a Gold Glove finalist last year. When he's healthy, we know that he plays the position really well. But what if a team wants him, but they don't want him to play shorts? There are all sorts of variables here, and the no trade clause influences that dynamic. Now, Jacob obviously invoked the no trade clause this year. Would he do that in the offseason? For some guys, they don't want to make a move in season. They'd rather wait until the offseason. Maybe he has a change of heart. Maybe the Rangers tell him, hey, we're resetting next year, and he wants to. There's so many variables in the offseason, but you're talking about when healthy. Corey Seager, one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball, one of the best players in baseball. There are teams that I'm sure would be willing to take that on if they're trying to win in 2027. And same with Jacob. Also, don't know what the Rangers are going to want to do. Maybe the Rangers decide, hey, we had a good finish to 2026. We're gonna go after this again. And the other element, of course, is there going to be a salary cap or not, and how that gets rolled out. I can't imagine that it will be enforced right away with existing contracts, but that's obviously going to be a part of the conversation too.
My concern would be that ownership has kind of decided we're not good enough to keep buying up players for this run, and before, I guess, Seager and Simeon and DeGrom, they were on quite a stretch of not. It's like they're waiting for the draft and development to produce a good enough team that then we could throw additional resources on. But I wouldn't imagine if this team continues to take steps back in what they're investing in itself, that a turnaround would be likely until a team that's notoriously not been able to draft and develop starts drafting and developing. Sands, how about you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that let's just look at it like this year. The Rangers are pushing for a playoff spot, and that appears to be their intention the rest of the way. And when you do that, you need to have, contributions from your farm system. They're the guys who are your stud prospects, right? They're your Sebastian Walcotts, guys that you envision as being a big part of the future. But they're also guys who come up and give you 2 good weeks because someone gets hurt, and you need that guy to fill a role. Those guys aren't the sexy contributors. I mean, just think about the bullpen. One of the things we talked about, and one of the reasons why the Rangers added Chase Silseth, was to improve their bullpen depth. Because you look at like guys 7, 8, and then through like 14 in their bullpen, and obviously guys 9 through 14 aren't guys on the active roster, but they've just been shuffling through guys trying to find production, trying to find contribution. So whether it's just the future strength or the immediate need, you have to get production from your farm system. And I don't think that any team that wants to compete consistently or sustain success is able to to do so without that. And so that obviously needs to be a big part of the Rangers' formula moving forward. And obviously they know that, right? They're trying. It's not like they're ignoring their farm system. This isn't a Dave Dombrowski situation where it seems like whenever he's in charge of a team, they trade prospects like crazy, or AJ Preller, but they have the currency to do that. And the Rangers right now aren't in that position.
How many teams do you think they had to stave off of trying to get Latz?
Well, if he was made available, then I'm sure a lot of people, were really interested. That goes without saying. The fascinating thing, Eric, is, we know of all the deals that get done. We don't know the deals that don't get done. We don't know how close they were, and we hear all these things, like the DeGrom no trade thing. Obviously, like, we have talked to Jacob, he's acknowledged it. But some of these rumors, some of these things come up, and they're not even true. It's it's a leverage play. It's a push for this, a push for that. So I don't really know. Again, what we do know, and just deducing from that, is that the Rangers obviously had conversations that got far enough to where they approached Jacob deGrom about whether or not he would accept a trade. And that means that the Rangers, in some capacity, had the mindset of selling. And if they had that mindset, then I'd imagine that Jacob Latz was a part of conversations, just because I'd imagine he'd be of great value because he's got control. He's an all-star reliever. He's been one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball this year. And any team that is interested in winning this year would want him. And frankly, you look at teams like the Blue Jays, who took on the role of like a seller in 26, but a buyer in 27. Like, even those teams would have an interest too. So I'd imagine the market was there, but I just don't know to what degree conversations are had about him.
Jared, how relieved is the clubhouse that this day is come and gone?
Yeah, no matter what role you're in as a team or players on a team, whether you're buying or selling, this is I think a very stressful day. I mean, I know that the average fan doesn't care so much about this because, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. The Rangers are their favorite team, and that's a team they watch. But like, for a lot of these guys, they don't, they have kids. They don't know, am I going to be in a different country today? Josh Smith is now, like, you just don't know. And so I think there's a lot of stress and a lot of in the uncertainty and the unknown. For some of these guys, they might just be for a couple months. For other guys, if they got 3 more years left on their deal or team control, then, they're changing their future trajectory, right, in terms of where they go and what life's like. So I think it's a big relief. I'll say this, and we'll see how the team responds, but it does seem that the sense I get is that there's some resolve in that clubhouse.
Sure.
Hey, what are you talking about selling? We want to win, and we can sit here and break down the Rangers all we want and the strengths and the weaknesses, and hey, they did not look very good during that road trip and all that, but we know that athletes have a degree of belief that allows them to do what they do, and obviously those guys in there believe that they can make a playoff push. And I guess there are worse things in life than getting to watch a team try and do that. But obviously, today was not as active, for the Rangers that I think a lot of people anticipated.
Yeah, I was just kind of anticipating once this day comes and goes, everybody kind of looks at each other and say, all right, this is who we are now. We got to either find a way to get this done or we're not. And so maybe it kind of galvanizes a team that way. And listen, they still have to pitch, hit, and defend. But maybe since this day is over with, now they look at each other and say, okay, we're all here with the exception of Josh Smith, and let's try and find a way to turn this thing around and maybe win this division.
Yeah, no, listen, if you want to, hey, I know that there are a lot of people listening. I'm sure the fan text is lighting up. There are a lot of people that wanted to sell, right? Like, I get it. I am not going to.
Well, after this week, they did. After this week, I admit I'm one of them too. I was one of them, Jared. I was one of them.
There's clearly the Rangers. Again, clearly the Rangers were of a similar mindset. Otherwise we don't. Jacob deGrom doesn't get asked about waiving his no trade clause.
Sure.
So when I say what I'm about to say, I want to first acknowledge that if that was your stance, if that was your position, how could you be called crazy? I mean, let's forget that the AL West is not a division with anyone running away with things. The Rangers are 2 games under 500. Just that in and of itself, typically a team 2 games under 500 isn't pushing for a playoff spot. You know, that's still a new thing for us with this third wild card. So that's valid, right? I'm not, but from the Rangers standpoint, they probably are of the mindset, hey, this division's not very good. You know, yeah, the Astros have our number, but we don't think they're that good. And I mean, the Astros are well under 500 if you take their games against the Rangers out of the equation. The Mariners obviously haven't. They have not, despite what they appear to be on paper, they have not emerged. The Rangers are getting, hopefully, Josh Young back. They finally have Wyatt Langford and Corey Seager. They're going to get Jacob Junis back. They're getting Jack Leiter back. They're getting Jordan Montgomery back here soon, Cody Bradford. Now, I say all that. Who knows who gets hurt, between now and then, right? It's not like everyone's guaranteed to stay healthy or perform, but, that's probably the Rangers' mindset is, all right, let's roll the dice with what we got and go from there, and hopefully they can make a push. But obviously, not the week that you would expect to proceed, an approach such as that.
Yeah, they're not beating good teams anymore. That's the thing. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of where I look at it right now. Is that was kind of their calling card. The bad teams were, they were having trouble with those, but now they can't beat the good teams. So that's why I went sell mode. I went sell mode because in the playoffs you're going to play good teams, but they always say get in the tournament and see what happens. You never know, but they're not beating good teams anymore.
Yeah, and I'll say this: they're not going to have to beat a lot of good teams here in the very near future because they're playing San Francisco, who just traded half their team, although their best pitcher is going tonight. Baltimore, just kind of sold a little bit, and then the Angels traded, a quarter of their team. The Athletics stink. Mm-hmm. The Nationals are good, but then you play the Angels again. So, they do have a little run here, basically throughout the rest of August until you face the Brewers. I guess the White Sox and the Brewers in the last week. But the next 3 weeks, they're going to have a chance to beat up on bad teams. But as we always talk about, you got to do it, right? I mean, the schedule doesn't guarantee wins or losses. It's the play on the field. And, we'll find out here in short order whether or not the Rangers are going to punch back and first of all, snap this losing streak to then get back, back in, in a place where they're at or above 500.
The weight has been lifted off of them, and now they will soar here in the final 2 months of the season. That's my prediction, Sans. I'm sticking to it. Have yourself a great night, and we'll catch up with you soon.
All right, fellas. Take care.
There he goes.